And if I go and I'm going to hide the joints for a second and look at the control vertices of the curve, if I select them and move them, what should happen is my joints are going to move, which is nice. So that's my bendy. And now I'm going to make controls to set that up. So to do that, I'm going to use my bendy one, my joints that I made at the end here, and I'm going to rename them. So we'll call this bendy move base joint. Enter. And bendy move as capitalized, so I know exactly which joint the ones that